Kate Bush will address the nation at the end of this piece of music, and it's Sat in Your Lap. Well, that track was Sat in Your Lap, which was released, in fact, in April of last year and recorded by Kate Bush, who's in the studio this afternoon, and I think recently back from Jamaica. Kate, we haven't heard that much of you. I mean, you haven't been that often in the public eye in the last, well, almost since the tour, really. You appeared your most in public.
Yes.
And the tour was the end of 79.
Yes,
Middle
that's
79.
right.
You were receiving such rave notices in the papers. I mean, if I was to quote from, I think, the Sunday Telegraph, who said that you were the most important news singer of the decade, and that the shows in 1980, it says, one person said, it beggars belief, a dazzling testimony to a remarkable talent. Did you find it very hard, to follow that up? I mean, obviously...
My head's just collapsed. Well, I haven't had to follow it up yet, so I've got that problem coming, really, but I think that's the trouble with anything you do that is well accepted. If people like it, they expect the next thing to be even better. But I don't think that worries me as much as my own internal voices, which keep saying the next thing I do must be better than the last thing I did. So I think that's the one I listen to more. I think if I spent all my time listening to what people said about trying to live up to the things I've done in the past, you know, I'd be a quivering wreck, really. I think you have to listen to your own voice inside. It's the only way.
Around the time of Sat in Your Lap, your music seemed to undergo quite a radical change, and you seem to have discovered synthesizers and the joys of microchip technology. Did you actually meet up with Peter Gabriel? I think he introduced you to a lot of those ideas.
Yes, I think what Peter was responsible for was giving me a rhythm box, which up until that time I hadn't worked with rhythm machines at all. And
you used old-fashioned drums and people hitting things.
Yes, but of course, not having anything like that to work with before I went into the studio, the rehearsals were taking place in studio time. When you've got things like rhythm boxes, you can make demos and work on the songs outside of the studio before they come in. And in a way, I think that's what I was badly lacking in, and that was rhythm to work with when I was actually writing the material. Because up until that stage, I hadn't been able to apply drums to the tracks until we got into the studio. And so most of the stuff I was writing was tending to be more rhythmic, just because of the fact that I was using a rhythm box. And I think another very important change was on the last album I met the Fairlight for the first time, which is more or less a revolutionary synthesizer. And Richard Burgess from Landscape had been taking them around the studios to demonstrate them. And as soon as I met it, I just fell in love with it.
Well, I think we're about to hear an example of the Fairlight in action, which is the B-side of that single, Lord of the Reedy River, written, I think, by Donovan.
Yes, that's right.
Wasn't there some strange circumstance that you met Donovan, or...
No, it was very odd. There were lots of coincidences, because at the time I was thinking of doing the track, he kept appearing on television and, you know, up on posters and everything, and it was almost like he was calling me, you know, and telling me to do it. And I rang him up and said that I'd really love to do this song, and would he mind?
Why did you like his music particularly?
I've always been a fan of his, and I think my favourite album of his is HMS Donovan, which of course is where this song is off of. It's fantastic. He's dealing with all kinds of area that I actually don't think anyone else has dealt with. It's like this sort of magical area of children, but that side that stays in you when you grow up. I fell in love with a swan. My eyes were filled with feathers. He filled me with song. In the reedy river. In the reedy river. I am my boat lovers. He in his royal plumage, I threw him some love. In the
And that was The Lord of the Reedy River, a Donovan track recorded by Kate Bush, who's in the studio this afternoon. Kate, I've never really considered you to be that traditional a pop singer, mainly because you never appear very much in kind of gossip columns or at gigs or whatever. And you always strike me as someone who keeps themselves very much themselves and live something of a recluse, perhaps. Is this the case? A hermit? Is this what you're like?
No, I don't think I am really. I think I'm not the sort of person who does go to discos and glamour parties and things, so that's probably why I don't appear in gossip columns very much. But I spend a lot of time working, and I think that's something that's hard for people on the outside to appreciate. For instance, I just spent the whole of last year making an album, and just making an album, nothing else. There was just no time for anything else. This album was very different from the others. I didn't expect it to take nearly so long, but I think...
It's rather extreme, I think.
It is a long time, yes.
Yeah. Well, we're going to listen to the new single in a moment, The Dreaming, which is also the title track of the LP. And it does strike me as being a very experimental track. And you used on it, among other people, I believe, Rolf Harris and Percy Edwards.
Yes.
This is true.
Yes, it is true.
Now, why did you... I mean, I also heard that, you liked Rolf Harris for a long time because you used to have his singles when you were young. Which ones did you have?
Yes, that's not quite how it was. My brother used to have
Your brother?
singles.
Let's get this right.
And the one that he really liked was Sunrise, which, of course, is Rolf playing the didgeridoo. In fact, a song that he based on an Aboriginal tune.
Explain what a didgeridoo is to anyone who might not know.
A didgeridoo is basically a piece of wood that is hollowed out by termites, because the inside of the wood is very soft, and they just eat their way through this stalk of wood, leaving a hollow outside, a circular branch of a piece of wood. And what you do is you blow down the piece of tube to make a droning sound, and it's very difficult because they use a circular breathing motion, which means that they can play the instrument continuously without a break to breathe. So what they do is, as they're breathing out through their mouth,
they breathe
in through their nose, and it's a really difficult technique. And
I thought only Roland Kirk and jazz musicians could do that.
Oh, it's a very similar thing, yes, that's exactly it. And of course, for the snake charmers, it's imperative that they don't take any break, or they get bitten by the snake. So it's
so there's a little incentive to learn.
Yes, there is there, definitely, yeah.
And Percy Edwards, then, I mean, what's his contribution to this? I mean, he's known as a great bird and animal impersonator. Presumably it must be. What does he actually do on the record?
Well, the song really is all about not only the Aborigines, but trying to conjure up the visual idea of the landscape that they would be in, which is like an incredibly barren land, a very, very big land, very empty and spacious. And in a way, I just got this image of sheep roaming on the plains out in the bush. And as Percy's about the only animal impersonator I know, we thought it would be great not only to get him in to meet him, but also to get a big selection of animal sounds from Australia. And he came in.
He produced the sheep noises?
Yes, he did.
Fantastic.
And he came in and just did a big selection for us. He did kookaburras, sheep, emus. I didn't even know that emus made a sound, but they do, and it's beautiful. And
so the entire Australian bush on this record is in fact Percy Edwards?
Yes, all the sheep are, yeah. And the other interesting thing is that we've got these Aboriginal records with some of their music on, and they have this very strange singing technique, which is like a it's just, they call it shaky voice, and it sounds just like sheep. It's just like sheep. And again, that was a very sort of nice parallel to bring into the song, the idea of humans and sheep all sort of conversing on the same level.
What's the song trying to get across, though? Presumably it is in defence of the Aborigines' lot, to a degree.
Yes, absolutely. It's really about how white man has to come in and take away the originators of the land that he's decided he wants. And it doesn't seem right to me. It seems that all the information that you get, especially from old cultures like the tribes, it's quite scary to us white people. But it's great, isn't it? All these fantastic tribes just hanging on in there. And apparently they're growing again. So, yeah.
There goes another kangaroo on the bonnet on the van. Many an Aborigines mistaken for a tree, till you near him on the motorway, the tree begins to breathe. The civilized keep alive the territorial war. Erase the race, the claim the place, and say we dig for ore, or dangle devils in a bottle and push 'em from the pull of the bush. You'll find 'em in the road. In the road. In the morning. With no warning. We bring in the rigging. Many an Aborigines mistaken for a tree. You near him on the motorway, the tree began to breathe. Erase the race, the claim the place, and say we dig for ore. Dangle devils in a bottle and push 'em from the pull of the bush. There goes another kangaroo on the bonnet of the van. You find 'em in the road. In the road.
That was The Dreaming, the title track of Kate Bush's LP, released in 6 weeks. Is that right? Approximately 6 weeks.
Yes, 5 or 6 weeks.
5 or 6 weeks. Oh, there's another thing I wanted to ask you about this record, Kate. And on the cover, it's got a very extraordinary painting on it, which I've just noticed. It says here that the painting is called "The Rock Python Was Tired and Her Babies Were Crying, so she stopped at a cave and painted herself there."
Yes.
Seems a very unusual, but somehow very appropriate title for a painting. Who did this? It wasn't by you, was it?
No, it was by my bass player, Del Palmer.
Oh,
who
yeah.
happens to be a very talented artist as well. And it's all connected, really, with the whole thing of the dreaming, which was a time for the Aborigines, which is a great religious time, and when humans and animals were as one. Humans were animals. It's just that they were all sort of mixed into one, and they could change shape. They could become animals and humans if they wanted to. And there was this big thing about all these snakes that came up from the core of the earth and pushed themselves up through the earth. And wherever they stop, they leave themselves in rock forms. So there are all these incredibly huge rocks just standing in the middle of the desert all over Australia. And the Aborigines say, you know, this is one particular snake that stopped here. You know, that they've left their form in a stone. And
Slightly
again,
unsettling.
it's just such a beautiful image. It's wonderful. And that was one of the
That's what the
paintings that was found
painting's meant to represent.
in the cave, yeah. And we just copied it.
What else can you tell us about the LP? I mean, there's various tracks that I've heard various stories about. There's a track called Pull the Pin, which is one of them, which I think features Dave Gilmour of the Pink Floyd playing on it.
Yeah.
Now, the man who discovered you, in fact. What is that particular song about? It's I think something to do with the Vietnam War.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it is,
I'm not going to tell you, you're going to tell me.
No, but that's great, you've got it. That's absolutely what it is about. I saw a programme that was a documentary about a frontline cameraman who went out in that particular war. And the film was very biased against the Americans, and I'm sure there are just as many films biased against the Vietnamese, but the way they were portrayed in this documentary was that the Americans were like these big, clumsy things that were just stomping through the jungle, you know, and smelly. You could smell their cologne and tobacco for miles away. So as far as the Vietnamese were concerned, they could just tell where they are all the time, because, you know, they don't have to use radar.
Do they have a particularly sensitive sense of smell or something?
I think they're particularly sensitive people, yes. And in a way, this is what came across in the documentary, that the Vietnamese were in fact quite a craftful, beautiful race who were fighting for something that they believed in. They wear a little silver Buddha on a chain around their neck.
He's the Vietnamese soldiers.
Yes. And they pop it in their mouth whenever they go into action, so that if at any moment when they die, they will have Buddha on their lips. And it's beautiful, it's so incredible, and it's so much meaning and so much love for them that, again, you know, it was all the time just epitomising how much art and beauty existed in the Vietnamese
and was
race.
being destroyed by
yes, that's right.
Western world, as it were. There's another song on this LP, the title which I don't know, but I've heard that there's a song about Houdini.
Yes.
Is this true?
Yes, it is.
What is it about Houdini that you found interesting?
Well, I think he was a really fascinating guy. The whole thing of him trying to escape all the time while he was alive and living on that line which is like between death and life, and the challenge, and there was a whole side to his life besides the escapology, which was to do with spiritualism. And I think he'd had some very sad experiences trying to contact his mother, who had died, and he visited mediums and tried to get through to her, and he just kept meeting all these fakes and frauds who were basically just tearing him up, you know, because he was hoping to believe in something. And him and his wife devised a code between them, so that if ever he or she should die and the other wanted to contact them, they would know if it was them, and they would know when it was a fraud, because no one other than the two of them.
What was the code then?
The code basically came down to two words, which was Rosabelle, believe. And that was all to do with a song that they'd sung together when they were first on stage many years ago. After he died, she spent several years going around to see if he could come through, if she could reach him. And I think it was quite ironic because in many ways she was going through exactly that same pain again that he had gone through trying to reach his mother. And she went to all the seances and lots of fakes and frauds. Oh yes, Houdini's coming today. And she'd pop round and it would just be a fake, and it must have been really breaking her heart. Except one day that a guy rang her up and she went to see him and he gave the correct code. And as far as she was concerned, it was Houdini. He'd got through. And thus he'd escaped even death, which was the parallel, I think, that I found just so beautiful. This
being as he was an escape
human,
artist.
that's right,
Yeah.
just escaping all the time from anything. Nothing could hold him down.
That's a good story.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
If an eccentric story. Most of these songs seem to have some extraordinary inspiration to them. You seem an extraordinarily sensitive person. Do you live your life by very strict principles? I think you're a vegetarian, among other
Yes.
things. Are you religious or anything?
No, I don't think I am really.
What can you tell us about yourself?
Well, I am a vegetarian, but again, it's really things that seem to affect me emotionally that I react to. But for instance, with not eating meat, it just got to the point where I felt I couldn't eat live animals that had been killed just for me, because if I had to do it myself, if I had to go out and kill a pig, I just wouldn't be able to do it. I'd just end up weeping and saying, oh, piggy, I love you. So why should I eat something that someone else has had, they've got together and killed it for me? It didn't seem right. So
Making me feel very guilty at this point.
Well, no, I think as long as you realise what you're eating, that's really cool. But lots of people, they just pick up a cellophane wrapper with something that resembles meat in it and eat it every day a week, and they don't really consider what they're doing at all. I think that, in a way, is perhaps the danger. It just becomes so removed from the source. And if someone actually had to go along to an abattoir or, skin a cow, I bet you 80% wouldn't be able to do it.
I believe you, actually. Well, let's get back to this LP. We're going to listen to, in a moment, a track entitled All the Love. Well, what can you tell us about this track, then, All the Love?
Well, I suppose this is quite depressing, really, but the big thing I've noticed is that, even though you have very close friends, you never really say what they mean to you until maybe it's too late, or it's in a situation where it's tragic, and so you have to in order to help them.
Is it based on something that actually happened to you, then?
I think it's based on things that have happened to me, but also things I've seen happen to other people, especially. I think in a way I felt, for instance, John Lennon's death was quite a good example, because although I think he did get a lot of feedback from people when he was alive, he in a way got even more when he was dead, and that just doesn't seem right to me, because if the feedback is directed at a person, it should happen when he's alive, not when he's dead. It should happen when he can enjoy it and go, yeah, they really think I'm all right. Because, that's what's so important, and we never do it because we always feel just too scared. It's a fear.
Love was the release of love and grief, never I get what they want to hear. They think I'm up to something weird and I'm for real. It's the head of fear. So now when they ring, I get by the sheet to let them in. I needed you to love me too. I wait for you. All the love, all the love, all the love you should have given. All the love, all the love, all the love we could have given. All the love, all the love, all the love.
Take care. Toodaloo. Bye then. Bye, Fernanda. Bye. Later. Bye. Cheerio. Bye. Goodbye. Bye. 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 Cheers. Bye.
Goodbye.
I'll see you soon. Good night.
Well, you can't say this programme isn't instructive. Kate Bush expounding on all the strange and extraordinary things that provoke the songs on her new LP, The Dreaming. And that was a track from it, the last track we've just heard, All the Love.